You already know what makes the deep ocean frightening. It is cold, it is dark, and the weight of the water overhead would crush a submarine hull flat. All of it is survivable. Most of the deep sea sits a few degrees above freezing, and animals live down there without much trouble at all. There is one place on the seafloor with real heat in it. That place would kill you in the blink of an eye, and it is the most crowded ground in the deep ocean. Start with what one of these actually is. Seawater drains into cracks in the seafloor and sinks toward the magma underneath. It comes back up, loaded with dissolved metal and sulfur. The moment it hits near freezing water, the minerals fall out of it as black grit, and the whole column turns into a plume of what looks like smoke. That is a black smoker. The fluid coming out of the top of one can reach around 400 degrees Celsius. Your oven at home cannot get close to half that. It does not boil because 2 miles of seawater sitting on top of it will not let it. Nobody knew any of this existed until February 1977. On the 17th of February, a submersible called Alvin dropped onto the Galapagos Rift. Jack Donnelly was flying it. Jack Corliss from Oregon State and Tjeerd van Andel from Stanford were in the sphere with him. They were geologists and they were looking for warm water. That was the whole assignment. What they found on the bottom was clams. White ones, a foot across, packed in a field on bare lava. Corliss got on the line to the surface and asked whether the deep ocean was not supposed to be a desert. There were no biologists on that ship. Nobody had thought to bring one. They collected what they could, ran out of preservative partway through, and it took 2 more years to get an actual biology team back down there. What they had dropped into was not one habitat. A vent is a stack of them, and the only thing that sorts them is distance from the heat. Every animal down there holds a position in that gradient, and some of those positions are only a few centimeters wide. Start at the cool edge and work your way in. The first thing you meet is a forest. Giant tube worms. 2 meters of white tube anchored to the rock, with a plume of red tissue out the top of each one. They cluster where the hot fluid mixes into the cold water, which is the outermost ring where anything can feed. Look for its mouth. You will not find one. No mouth, no stomach, no gut, no anus. The adult worm has no digestive system at any point along its body. What it has instead is an organ packed with bacteria. Those bacteria run on the sulfur coming out of the vent, and they build sugar out of it the way a plant builds sugar out of sunlight. The worm does not eat. It is fed from the inside by tenants. The part that took decades to work out is how the tenants get in. Monica Bright's team solved it by building settlement cubes and leaving them on the seafloor to catch worms in the act of arriving. What they found is that the young worm does have a mouth. It has a full, working gut. It settles on the rock, and then the bacteria come through its skin. Not its mouth, its skin. They push inward through layer after layer of tissue and stop in the middle of it. And that is where they stay. The gut around them swells into the organ that will feed the animal for the rest of its life. Everything else in the digestive tract closes down and disappears. Then the worm shuts the door. Bright's team found that once the organ is set, any bacteria still working their way in get killed in a wave of cell death that clears out the stragglers. So the worm you are looking at was infected on purpose, dissolved its own stomach to make room for the infection, and then locked out everyone who showed up late. It also cannot move, ever. It picked a spot in the gradient as a larva, and it will hold that spot until it dies. The animals that can move have a different problem. To hold a line in the dark, you have to see where the line is. Move in closer, and the forest gives way to a swarm. Rimicaris exoculata, a shrimp about the length of your finger, piled by the thousand onto the sides of chimneys on the mid-Atlantic ridge, more than 2 miles down. They cover the rock so densely that the rock stops being visible. The name is worth translating. Exoculata means deprived of eyes. When it was described, it did not appear to have any. There were no eye stalks, no corneas, nothing on the head at all. In 1989, Cindy Van Dover, then at Woods Hole, published a paper in Nature with Ette Zoets, Stephen Chamberlain, and John Cann. They had cut into the shrimp and found something nobody expected. There is a pair of organs sitting under the shell on its back. They are packed with rhodopsin, which is the same light-sensitive pigment in the back of your eye right now. Thick nerve tracts run from them straight into the brain. There is no lens. There are no optics of any kind. What you are looking at is a bare retina, mounted on the animal's back, pointing up. Which leaves an obvious question. 2 miles down, with no sunlight for more than a mile above you, what would you need a bare retina for? The vent is glowing. Anything hot enough gives off light, and the fluid pouring out of these chimneys is hot enough. The glow is faint, it sits at the red end, and it is the only light in that entire environment. In the same issue of Nature, a second paper ran the numbers on whether an eye like that could actually pick it up. Now put that together with what the shrimp is doing there. It farms bacteria too in its gill chamber, and it has to push right up against the hot fluid to keep them supplied. Too far out and the crop starves. Too far in and the animal cooks. So it grew a thermometer that works at a distance. The retina takes up around 0.5% of its entire body volume, which for a sense organ is enormous. It has no picture of the world. It has a temperature and an edge, and that is all it needs. The shrimp uses that edge to stay back. One animal does not stay back. Go all the way in, onto the chimney wall itself, and you find something living directly on it. The Pompeii worm. 4 inches long, pink, with a grey fleece of bacteria growing across its back. It builds a paper-thin tube and cements it straight onto the outside of the chimney, in the hottest position any animal on Earth occupies. Think about what that costs it. The tail end of the worm sits down in the tube, in water hot enough to burn you. The head end sticks out into water near freezing. One animal, 4 inches from end to end, living in 2 different climates at the same time. There is nothing else like it. For about 30 years, the number attached to this worm was 105 degrees Celsius. It went into textbooks. Institutions still publish it. Nobody had checked. Nobody could. Every time a Pompeii worm was brought to the surface, it died on the way up, killed by the drop in pressure long before it reached the deck. The species had never been examined alive, so the number stood, and the worm became the great exception, the animal that broke the temperature rule. Bruce Shillito's team in Paris finally got around the problem in 2013. They sampled the worms without letting the pressure change, carried them up sealed, and moved them into a pressurized tank, still under load. For the first time, live Pompeii worms in a lab. Then they heated them. 2 hours between 50 and 55 degrees killed them. Tissue damage throughout, cells dying, the full heat stress response firing. The real ceiling was below 55, not 105. Shillito's own explanation is that a run of earlier papers had turned this animal into a thermal exception. After that, nobody could test it. The animal is still remarkable. Its comfortable operating temperature is above 42 degrees, which is hotter than anything else with a nervous system will tolerate. But look at what actually happened. An animal held a false record for 3 decades by being impossible to bring home alive. Below 55 is where animals stop. The chimney does not stop. Push past the worm's tube into the fluid itself, and the animals are gone. Nothing with a nerve or a muscle goes any further. What is left is microbes, and they are the ones holding the actual record. In 2008, Ken Takai's team pulled an organism out of a vent field on the central Indian ridge and grew it in the lab under pressure. It divides, feeds, and reproduces at 122 degrees Celsius. Nothing alive has ever been shown to do more. The pressure is not a detail. It is the whole reason the number is possible. At the surface, water gives up and turns to steam at 100, and everything living in it is finished. Put 2 miles of ocean on top, and it stays liquid far past that. The deep sea does not raise the temperature limit for life by making things tougher. It raises it by keeping the water in one piece. And there is more room above that than you would think. On the Mid-Cayman Rise, 3 miles down, there is a field where the fluid comes out at around 500 degrees. So the whole thing stacks by temperature. Freezing water on the outside, tube worms where it starts to warm, shrimp against the wall, Pompeii worms cemented onto it, and microbes inside the fluid itself, up to 122. Above that, nothing. Which leaves the question Corliss was shouting up the line about, with a field of clams in front of him and nobody aboard qualified to answer it. Go back to the claim you started with. The one place on the seafloor with real heat in it is also the most crowded ground in the deep ocean. Here is why. Down there, heat is not a hazard. Heat is the meal. Everywhere else in the deep ocean, your food falls from above. Dead plankton, waste, the remains of things that died in the sunlit water, drifting down for weeks and arriving thin. Most of the seafloor lives on scraps from a world it will never see. A vent does not wait for scraps. The chemistry comes up from underneath, continuously, and the bacteria turn it into food on site. That is why the tube worms grow to 2 meters. That is why the shrimp pile up thousands deep. The richest ground in the deep sea is also the ground that will cook you. Every animal there has built its body around holding a line in a gradient a few centimeters wide. So that is what you have actually been looking at. Not a set of animals toughing out a hostile place. A set of animals crowding as near to a food source as their bodies will physically allow, and not 1 centimeter nearer. Every vent on Earth will shut off. The plumbing shifts, the flow closes, and everything gathered around it dies where it stands, because none of it can reach the next one. So the heat was never what these animals were surviving. It was what they were chasing. And the cold is what catches them.